Welcome to Adventures in Alchemy, a podcast filled with witchy tips and true stories to inspire your magical life. I am Michelle Martin Dobbins, the creator of Daily Alchemy and the Adventures in Alchemy podcast. This podcast is supported by the Daily Alchemy Premium Members Lab. I don't run a Patreon, so I keep membership at a very economical $11.11 a month. For that, you not only help sponsor this podcast, but you will receive access to 14 alchemy courses, and we add a new course each quarter, access to Reiki Level 1, 2, and Master's training and distance attunements, plus a library of audio distance Reiki healings, monthly alchemical experiments, PDFs of all my books and planners, and 15% off of everything else I sell. Also, there's a members-only Facebook group, so we can chat amongst ourselves in a private community. So when you join, I do ask that you commit to 3 months, since you are able to access and download all of the content immediately. It's $33.33 for the first 3 months, and then $11.11 every month after. I am so grateful to all the premium members who support my work, and I'd love to have you as a premium member too. If you're not already one, you can go to DAPM Lab, that stands for Daily Alchemy Premium Members Lab, dapmlab.com to check it out, or there'll be a link in the show notes. Now, on with the show, and may it be a blessing to all who listen. Okay, so today we're going to talk about a juicy topic, one that I like to ponder a bit, and that is there a price for magic? Most of us have an opinion on that, and even if you haven't thought about it too much, you probably have some beliefs that you've picked up from out in the world. And I apologize, I'm trying to keep 2 border collies quiet. It's tricky, so if you hear something in the background, it's them. Okay. The price for doing my podcast is trying to entertain and keep border collies quiet. All right, so is there a price for magic? As always, this episode is purely my conjecture, my 2 cents on how I believe magic works. So what I say may or may not make any sense to you. And I'm interested in getting your feedback and your thoughts on how magic works. I know for me, a lot of this is trial and error and study and kind of putting it all together, how it works for me. So I believe magic is what we live in, right? It's like a fish lives in water, but I think water is also magical and fish live in magic too, right? Like everything that's around us is magic. It's like the prima materia, first matter from alchemy. Magic is what things are created from. And maybe prima materia might be a better word, and magic is using that to create ourselves instead of just waiting to be created upon, right? So why should it cost anything, right? It's that energy that makes the world go round. And I don't necessarily think magic costs us anything. And I guess maybe I should say the prima materia, the energy that all things come from, if you call that magic. I don't know. As I'm going through this, my words that I use may not be the best because it's there for all of us. It's there in infinite supply, right? The cost comes to me from the energy necessary to propel magic, right? Like fuel for a car. There needs to be some type of energy for a spell or a ritual or anything that you do in the world. Energy is needed. And it all, to me, comes from source or the prima materia. So there are many ways to approach this. And honestly, recently did a module for the Practical Magic course for the members of the Daily Alchemy Premium Members Lab. And so we talked in there and I shared about how to pay the cost for magic for a spell or ritual. And I don't know if it's necessarily the way that most people would think. So I want to kind of backtrack a little bit and look at what a lot of people's notions are on the price for magic, the cost for magic. So maybe that's new to you and you haven't considered it, but I bet you have in one way, even if you haven't, when you started kind of delving into the magical world, what be that law of attraction, what started you, or witchcraft or ceremonial magic or whatever. You may not think about the connection, but we all kind of have that. Like there's this overlying theme that a lot of the world talks biblically, like magic is not okay, witchcraft is not okay. A lot of people think like creating your own reality and making changes to life is not necessarily something that God or the gods, or however you look at it, would want us to do. And so sometimes the cost, right, is an eternity in hell, honest. I mean, if we're going to be brass tacks here and everything. And that's what kind of throws a lot of people off from magic. I'm one who kind of feels like as above, so below. My creator created me to be a creator. So there's energy here that I can use to create good in the world, and I can use to create interesting experiences in the world. My intent is always to do no harm, but I do feel like there's karmic energy to be paid for doing harm. And of course, sometimes we do harm and we don't mean to. So I'm not going to get too far off onto a talk about karma and things like that as far as a cost for magic. So there's always an energy necessary to create, right? Everything starts in thought, and then before it comes into fruition, which is something that you learn in the law of attraction world, but it's something that's true everywhere, right? We think of something before we create it. We think of building a house before we draw up the plans, and then we draw up the plans, and then we go through the steps to create it. But there is energy needed to create it. And whether you call that energy magic or something else, there definitely is something needed. So what is that something, right? In the magical world, there are often sacrifices and offerings as part of magic. I like to watch fiction about magic and witchcraft, even if I sometimes think it's totally over the top and stuff. But so if you're a fan of any of these shows, you'll notice that a lot of them deal with that concept of magic being pain. Or so like in the show The Magicians, there's one of my favorite characters on that show. Elliot says magic doesn't come from talent, magic comes from pain. And so in that show, there are people who have talent, but the people who are able to strongly use their magic have a lot of pain in their life. And then in the show The Order, another magical show, right? Magic requires sacrifice. And so usually, sometimes they will be doing a big ritual spell and it's like animals or people who are sacrificed. And if it's people, that always has to be a willing sacrifice, I think, in their case. But often the practitioners, they're cutting their hands, and their sacrifice is their pain and their blood. That doesn't really make a lot of us want to sign up for doing magic, right? But that's a pervading sense that's out there. And I'm not going to say that it's wrong in some cases, but hopefully as we go on, I will show you that there are other ways to pay for your magic. So it's just many of the fiction accounts of magic, and a lot of times there's overlap between fiction and reality. And just what we believe in this world is there is a cost for magic. There's also a belief that when it comes to magic, either you have it or you don't, right? This you will hear in fiction, this you will hear in real life. I hear this all the time. Lots of people who are like, well, I came from the bloodline of witches, or I came from this and this and that, and I have powers that you don't, you couldn't, you need to go through me. I'm not down for that, right? I think that we are all special people. We are all magical people, right? I'm standing with Aleister Crowley on this one, and it's strange how at this point in my life, I stand with Aleister Crowley on so many things when I never thought I would back in the day. But Aleister says every man and every woman is born a star. And I would agree, right? We all are spiritual beings having this human experience, and we all come from that same bloodline. Back far enough, we all have blood going through our bodies. That cliche of we all put on our pants one leg at a time. Yes, some people may intuitively know how to work with magic just better, or it might come easier for them, but anyone can learn. Anyone can learn how to work with magic, anyone can engage it. So don't let someone tell you that you don't have what it takes because you didn't get the DNA lottery or what you call it, right? If we also look at TV and real life, we know sacrifices to the gods used to be common. And in many pagan communities and just pagan people in the world, including myself, we leave offerings on altars still to this day. I don't. Well, I know there are people who still to this day sacrifice animals. Hopefully, nobody's sacrificing humans. I mean, if you get on the deep webs, you'll hear all kinds of crazy things. And people who are sacrificing animals in a certain way for their specific religion that is done in a way it's not something that I personally engage in, but I definitely understand different cultures live different lives, and we all have to engage in a certain amount of violence to survive in this world. And that is something that I've questioned, and I won't go too deep off of it, but that might sound startling to you. But if you think about ripping a plant from the earth as a violent act and realizing that plants are alive, and for us to live on this earth, we must take life. It's kind of deep, right? So we're all paying interesting prices to be alive, to have this human experience. And I can't say that I know why some of these things are the way they are, but I've said a lot of what feels like nothing. So what I'm going to go back to is there a price for magic? And I'm going to say yes, but it's complicated, right? Is that like a Facebook thing, or it's complicated, right? So as I said, we swim in magic like fishes swim in water, and we are magical beings, right? But we're all spiritual beings wearing these meat suits. And actually, I don't want to put our bodies down. Our bodies are beautiful temples for our spiritual beings, but I feel like they kind of tamp down our access to magic to a certain degree, right? Because human bodies can only handle so much. That's kind of why, I know a lot of magic is done, and I know for me, and a lot of traditions and shamans, hedge witches, anyone who journeys, anyone who does astral travel, a lot of magic work is done during an out of body experience and in dreams. Even though there are physical, real world steps that we take with our body, most of us can connect better and have more power during an out of body experience, and or an experience where they call on outside help, as in ancestors, deities, plants, angels, whatnot. And this can be looked at in a couple different ways. And I guess it goes down to semantics, and semantics can be important. So I probably do need to improve my semantics around this, because I feel like magic is in everything and it's everywhere. And so the cost is not necessarily for the magic, but it's for the fuel that makes the magic work. And maybe the fuel is magic, and I'm just need to work on my semantics, right? But as I said before, it's like gas to make a car go, fuel for our body. There has to be an energy exchange on this plane to make most things work, maybe everything. So with magic, that cost is going to vary, right? That's why it's so complicated, just as everything in the real world varies, right? Because often you can get a better deal on something. The cost might be lower if you know someone, if you have an in. The cost might be lower if you have a certain skill that you can share or assist, someone who's talented in home improvement, and they're going to just buy the parts and put them in themselves, or they're going to install the dishwasher themselves. So they pay less, right? Because they have a skill, a real world skill, but you might have a magical skill that makes your cost less. If there's a sale, right? And I guess the magical equivalent to like a sail could be like, the energies lining up, the portal being perfect, Mercury being wherever you like Mercury to be. I know most people don't like it to be in retrograde. I'm a Mercury retrograde baby, so it kind of jives for me. Sorry. But if you check that out, because if you don't have issues with Mercury retrograde and you feel kind of chill and like everything goes your way during that, you might be like me and you might have been born when Mercury was in retrograde. So you might be a Mercury retrograde baby. For everyone else, I'm sorry. But, energies line up for different people for different things at different times. So we all have sweet spots and the energy flows. And so that is another way that can help Magick. If you know someone important, sometimes you can get a better deal on purchasing things in the real world. And it happens that way magically, right? If you have close connections with an angel or a deity, or you have an ancestor that you work with who is really good with money or really good with political connections or whatever it is, right? So those things can definitely be helpful. And I think they can change how much energy and what kinds of energy are needed for Magick. So to me, that means that in a way there is a cost for Magick and it's some kind of energy. And that energy is going to be different for different things you're doing. But I don't think the cost necessarily needs to be pain or sacrifice. Although sacrifice, I think, sometimes gets a bad rap and should be thought of more as offerings. Like, because sacrifice implies pain and it doesn't sound good, right? No one wants to be a sacrifice like Scooby-Doo on the Scooby movies, if you've seen that one. But giving an offering from your heart, whether it be offering of your own energy, an offering of your love, an offering of your attention, or an offering of fruit or flowers or whatnot, that to me it can be in the same vein as sacrifice. I think it just depends on your intention and your attitude about it, right? It's like sacrifice kind of implies pain and offering kind of implies joy. Like offering, we're giving it freely. Sacrifice, we're like, oh no, this is not good. But I think that the cost for money can sometimes just be joy or connection, right? It's a channeling of some sort. So if you think about Monsters, Inc., right? If you don't have kids, I'll kind of explain it to you briefly. Or, well, if you don't have kids who are in the age range that you watched that. Anyway, if you haven't watched it, I think it's a really cool one to kind of watch and just think about the implications, because there's so many spiritual implications in that movie. But anyway, like the monsters would scare the children and they used the children's scream with the energy source, right? Like where we have electricity, they had scream power. But by the end of the movie, spoiler alert here, they found out that laughter power was stronger. So instead of the monsters coming in to scare the kids, they came in to make them laugh. So I think that's something that we would want to consider when we're doing Magick. Like certain forms of energy are going to be stronger. And I personally think that like the energy of an offering could be way stronger than the energy of sacrifice. The energy of joy could be way stronger than the energy of pain. So just a little thought for you to ponder upon there. So what does that mean for you if you're a magical person doing magical things? I mean, we're all magical people, but some of us don't necessarily want to do magical things, and that's cool. But if you listen to this podcast, you probably do. So if most of the things that you're doing magically, whether you're doing alchemy, law of attraction, chaos, magic, whatever, if most of it's already working for you the way you want it to, you're getting the results you want, then that likely means that you intuitively know how to add the needed energy to your magic. And it might just be your joy magic, your joy, your connection to source. If not, it might be something that you want to explore, right? If your magic is not working, you might want to explore, how can I fuel it? So for me, I channel different energy sources to fuel my magic. For instance, this is one that a lot of you might be familiar with. I'm a Reiki master. I know there are a lot of people that know Reiki, and Reiki is something that I teach in the premium members labs. So if you want to learn Reiki, you can always come there. It's a quick, easy way to learn. But when I use Reiki, and what I teach people to do is to be a channel for the Reiki energy so that the energy comes in through my crown chakra on the top of my head, and then it goes out through the energy centers in my palm. And that's how I'm sending healing Reiki energy to anyone. And I'm not sending my energy. If I try to send my own energy, and I've done this, like, and I know there are healers who work with their own energy and they're like, I can only heal someone for a certain amount of time. They still might get really good results, but they get drained because they're giving away their own energy. When you're a channel for energy, like Reiki energy, and you're just sending it through yourself and you're just being the channel, then you get recharged. You'll feel energized by it. You'll feel really great after you do a lot of Reiki on someone. You won't feel tired. You'll feel amazing, and you will get the healing as well. So to me, Reiki is a kind of magic, and I use that same concept in other magic. So if I'm going to do any kind of spell, any kind of ritual, anything that I'm trying to manifest, I am going to channel some other form of energy. I'm not going to try to do it from my own energy. My own energy is going to get overlaid in it if it's going through me and I'm a channel, but I don't want to drain my energy. And as a human, while I'm in body, I don't necessarily think that I possess that talent of that level of energy to be the fuel. I definitely can create change, but I use the fuel to do that. And that's where some of you might differ from me, and that's totally cool. So I use lots of different sources. I work with clover a lot. So I work with clover energy to channel that energy. So you can work with plants. You can definitely work with Reiki. You can work with the moon. You can work with elements, all kinds of things. I go into much more detail on how I do that and how you can do that in a way that works for you in the Practical Magic 101 class. And that's for like the Daily Alchemy members get that class for free as their membership. It is $11.11 a month. So it's a really great deal for that and much, much more classes. But anyway, if you want to go deeper, you can definitely play with this yourself and see like what you use as a fuel for your magic. And do you want to look at other sources? And if you're looking at like deities or angels and stuff, I would definitely work with them and build a connection before you start inviting them in. Don't invite and channel anything through yourself that you don't feel really safe about. When I'm doing anything other than like Reiki or something like that, I'm also going to use protection circles when I'm channeling that energy. So that's something that you want to consider as well. But yeah, that's my take on the cost for magic, is that you've got to get a fuel source and channel that fuel source. So I would love to hear, like, what do you think? Is there actually a price for magic? Am I just crazy? And if so, like, what do you think the cost is? So reach out, send me a message on any social media, give me an email, give me your take. And if you'd like to come on here and get interviewed and tell me your take and how you practice, I would love, love, love that. I'm wanting to share more people's daily practices and how they do magic. Just, I think that helps everybody to have a picture of what other people's practices are like and the kinds of things they do and how it affects their lives, and how that gives people inspiration to follow their own path and create their own daily practice. So if you're that person, send me an email. You can always reach me at dailyalchemy.com. If you go down to the bottom of the page, there's a link to send me an email. There's a link to get me on all the social media places. So, all right, guys, until next time, let's be change-making descendants, future exalted ancestors, and let's live magically in the now.